Shalom, is Levi Shore. Welcome back to Sweet and Good Torah. We're going to do Parsha Shelach. We're going to learn today all about the greatness of Eretz Yisrael, about the land of Israel, what makes it so great, what makes it so holy, why is it such a prized possession that for thousands of years, empire after empire, nation after nation has fought over it. Why even now is like there's this major conflict between Israel and Iran directing Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis and just trying to conquer. Why is the world's attention constantly? Their eyes are always on the land of Israel. And we're going to get advice today and see the greatness of it from Moshe Rabbeinu, from Moses. We're going to get advice from Yeshua ben Nun and Kalev ben Yefuna, men that actually conquered the land of Israel for the Jewish people in the ancient world. And we're going to see what they did and how we merit the land of Israel. All right, so let's start off. So let's bring this up here. We're going to take a look at the Parsha. And we're going to go to Bamidbar. We're going to go to the book of Numbers. It's Parsha Shelach. So it's the 13th chapter. It's Pasuk 18, the 18th verse, if you want to look it up. And it says, or Isem es haaretz. And so Moshe, he was giving advice to the spies. He was sending one spy from each of the Shvatim, from each of the 12 tribes. And he was saying, take a look at the land. It's like, take a look at the land. Mahi, what is it? Like, what is this land? What's the nature of the land of Israel? What's its special qualities? Ve'es ha'am hayoshev alecha. And what's the people that live there? Hechazak hu harafeh. So are they powerful? Are they strong? The people live there, are they strong or are they weak? And it says, Hama'at hu imrav. Is it just a little of them? Is it just a few people? Or is it many? So Rashi says something very interesting here. So Rashi says on on Esar it's Mahi, like what is the land? And Rashi adds something. He says, Yesh Eretz Migadeles Giburim. He says something interesting. He says there's land that produces mighty people. Well, really, what it really says is like a land that grows mighty people. Certain countries, they grow mighty people, they have mighty armies. V'yesh Eretz Migadeles Chalashim. Or is this a land which grows weak people? Interesting, like insight into what's going on here. And then he says, Yesh Migadeles Uchlusim. And then some lands, they really increase the population. The lands are very productive and healthy, and people have a lot of children there, and the population dramatically increases. Or he says, V'yesh me etes uchlusin. Or there's lands that decrease the population. So he wanted the spies to like pay attention to this. And then he said here, he says, this is his comment on is the people or the people who live there, are they strong or are they weak? So Rashi says, he says, Hechazaku harafa, like are they strong people or are they weak people? And it says Simon Maser Lehem. And Moses, he gave a sign to the spies, according to Rashi, of how to identify this. It's very interesting. He says, Im Bif Razim Yoshvim. If they're spread out, if they're living in unwalled cities, if they're all spread out, not living in huge cities, so chazakim hein, then they're strong. Somchin al gevurasa, because they don't need, like, it's interesting. A person that doesn't need all these defensive fortifications, they don't need walls around their city, they don't need missiles and like let's say like right now the Iron Dome, because they're constantly under attack. But a very strong people, it's interesting. They don't need necessarily all these fortifications and defenses. And he's talking on a spiritual level too. A nation, like when we are attached to Hashem, when we're attached to this infinite being, then we're invulnerable. And we don't need Iron Dome because we have Hashem's protection. But then he says, it says if they're weak, it says it says Ve'im be'arim bitzuros heim yoshvim. But if they live in fortified cities, they need all these defenses, like they need to live in a castle, they need all these fortifications. It's interesting insight. He says chalashim heim, then they're weak. It's the opposite of kind of what we think, and it's an interesting insight from Moshe Rabbeinu. All right, so let's go on here. We'll go on to the next pasuk, the next verse here, and it says. Uma haaretz asher hu yoshe ba hatovahi imra. He says, is this land, Moshe is saying, is this land good or is it evil? Is it bad? He says, Uma ha'arim asher hu yoshe behena habemachanim oba mitzarim. This is what Rashi was referring to too. And the cities they live in, the towns they live in, are they opened up or are like in camps or are they fortified? They have walls around them. So then Rashi says, he says, Uma ha'aretz hashmenahi imraza. Like, is the soil rich? Is the land rich or poor? Is it like great for giving crops? You know, is this going to be a fertile land that we're going to have plenty of food to eat because the soil's so rich, or is it going to be very hard to grow food here? And then he says, Hayesh ba eitz im ayin. And he asks a very interesting question. And he says, literally, it says, is the tree in the land or not? So one literal, way to read it is like, is there trees? There's a lot of trees, a lot of fruit. But there's a spiritual question that Moshe Rabbeinu is asking here. And he's referring to a very special tree that used to be there, used to be where Yerushalayim is, because that used to be the center of the Garden of Eden. At the top of the Har Habayis, at the top of the Temple Mount, where the temple stood, where the Aron HaKodesh, the Ark of the Covenant, rested, that's where that very special tree was, the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life. And Moshe is asking a very deep question. Is the tree of life there now? Are these people following the Torah? Or are they not following the Torah? And he was giving them a hint. It's like these people can't stand up to us. They're only following the Eitz Das Tov Ra. They're only following the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they cannot stand up to a people that are following the Torah. So Rashi says on this question, Hatovahi, is it good? And Rashi says, he's giving us a definition of what's good. What's a land? What's a proof that the land's good? And he says, B'mayanos, it has springs, natural springs of water. And then, of course, on the deeper level, because the Torah is compared to Mayim, it has springs of Torah learning. This is a land filled with Kedusha. This is a land filled with holiness. And the springs of Torah exist in the land of Israel. And that's one of the things that makes it so precious, so valuable. It's a land of Chachma, a land of wisdom. And it's a land that's special, of the special energy, the holy energy of Kedusha. It's a land where the great wisdom of the Torah can be pouring out of these springs. And it says, U tehomos, are there deep wells? He says, Tovim uvraim, which are good and healthy. And he's giving a very deep insight here. Rashi's saying, are there deep wells? And this is a deeper level. Are the deep secrets of the Torah? Can you mine them out here? Can you pull them up from the deep wells? And it's a very special land. It's a special land, of connection to the Torah. So Rashi says on Hayesh Ba'etz, is there a tree? Are there trees in the land? He says, Im yesh behem, if there is among them Adam kasher. Now here Rashi is saying something very interesting. He's relating tree to the comparison that a man is like a tree. And he says, Shiyagein Aleichem, is there an Adam kasher? Is there a holy man, a decent man there, an upright man, that he can protect them bizechusa, with his merit? And Moshe, the Midrash says, was referring specifically to Job, that he was a tzaddik, he was a righteous person, and he had great spiritual protection over the other people living there. Moshe was asking, is Eov still there? And the Midrash tells us that there was actually a Zavaya. When the spies were there, they were actually holding the funeral for Eov, for Job, and that his protection would no longer protect the land. Now, it says in many places in the Gemara, in the Midrashim, in the Zohar, that there's 7 special species, 7 special things that grow in the land of Israel, and Israel's praised for them. And it means that when, we have the Beis HaMikdash, when we have the temple, when the Kedusha is flowing through the land, like these become the best in all of the world. And the 7 species are the wheat, barley, so the breads of Eretz Yisrael, in the Yemot Mashiach, in the days of Messiah, the bread will be renowned throughout the world. The baked goods There are already some good baked goods, all around Yerushalayim and Jerusalem, but it's nothing compared to what's gonna happen. Like the bread is just gonna be renowned all around the world, the wheat and the barley, the grapes, and we're gonna see more about these grapes. But these grapes are gonna be the best grapes in the world. They're gonna be the most delicious, juicy grapes, and the wine is going to be in the ancient world. The wine coming from the land of Israel was considered the finest in the world. Now, people praise the wine, the famous wines that come out of France, the great wines of California, other places around the world. It's too many to mention. I'm leaving a lot of people out, but there's nations right now, there's areas that are renowned for their grapes. And one day, once again, the wine of Israel will be highly praised all around the world. The olives, and then referring to the very special the olive oil, the pure olive oil that came out of them, and they were excellent for lighting. They were used, the finest of it was used in the Beis Hamikdash to light the menorah in the temple. And one day again, the olive oil will be praised and desired from Eretz Yisrael. Interesting. Figs, they'll be the greatest figs in the world, the greatest dates. This is all in there. It's the potential in Eretz Yisrael that it hasn't reached anywhere near its full potential yet. The dates, referring to the dates growing in the date palm trees, and the dates will be highly prized around the world. And of course, Israel is fairly famous even now for the pomegranates, but it's nothing like it's going to be. And it's famous teaching in the Gemara that even the emptiest seeming Jew, even like you look at someone, he seems like the least religious Jew. The Gemara says, don't be fooled. He's as full with mitzvos as a pomegranate, as a rimon is filled with seeds. Like even like the least religious Jew is just doing so many mitzvahs we don't even realize. Okay, so now we're going to go. Let's see. Let me skip down here to. We're going to go to the 23rd verse here, and it says Vayavo ad Nachal Eshkol. So they came to the river, the valley of Eshkol. Eshkol means a cluster of grapes. Vayikrisu misham zamora, and they cut down there from the vine or the branch, the Eshkol, a navi. And they cut down this cluster of grapes. Echad vayisauhu bamos bishnayim. It says a very interesting thing here. It says they cut down this branch with a single cluster of grapes and it had to be lifted up by a pole by two. And we're going to see what Rashi says on here. And it says umin harimon, and then from the pomegranates umin ha te'eni, and from the figs. Now Rashi says something very interesting here. Rashi is going to give us explanation. Why is it using this word bishnayim, like bamot on a pole with two? So Rashi says, he says, Ma toma lomar bishnayim. What does the Torah mean? When the Torah says by two, what does that mean? It says bishnei motos. So Rashi's letting us in a little clue. It took two poles to lift up this giant cluster of grapes. Hakeitzad. So how was it done? How did they lift up this huge cluster of grapes? So Shemona Natlu Eshkol. So actually it took 8 of the spies to lift these 2 poles, and that's how supernaturally large this cluster of grapes was. So Echad Natal Te'ina, and then one carried this huge fig, this massive fig, V'echad Rimon, and one carried the pomegranate. So then, let's see. So then they're going to go back. Let me see if I can find this here. Then they're going to go back and they're going to give their report. The 12 spies are going to come back to the camp and they're going to give their report. I didn't write down which pasuk is here. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's right here. So they said, I think so. It's verse 27 if you want to look it up. And it says, Vayisaprulo. And this is what they told him. This is what they told Moshe. They gave the spies gave the report, and they said Vayomru, and they said, Banu el haaretz, asher shalaktanu. So we came to the land which you sent us to. V'gam zavach chalav davashi, v'zeh pirya. And it says it does. It flows with milk and honey. It's like a land rich in just the physical, everything we need physically, all the great foods, fruits, vegetables is great. It's very lush land for the animals. So just the perfect place to live. So the spies first, they had to say something true. If they start out with lies, no one will listen to them at all. But they said this is a land flowing with milk and honey. And Chazal teaches us that this kind of honey is it's like the dates are so rich and so juicy that the honey of the dates just comes dripping out of them. And it's also good for the bee honey, but this is like the actual date honey. And it's a land filled with just physical, abundance, but there's also a hint that it's filled with spiritual abundance. And the milk makes a person strong, and it's pure, it's white, it's not got no taint to it, no, no, spiritual, like lowly spiritual things involved with it. And milk's healthy, and so a young child needs to grow and to live, and so too the Torah and the mitzvos there, they flow like the milk and the honey, and then they help us grow. They make us strong, both physically and spiritually. And then this is fruit. So they meant to scare the Jewish people, which unfortunately they did. So 10 of the spies, they were kind of corrupted for whatever reason on this journey. They were all princes of their tribe, but they were afraid for their own glory, their own honor. They thought they would lose their riches, their high positions if they came in the land of Israel. And for whatever reason, it just corrupted them to speak lashon hara about the land. So then they went on to try to scare the Jewish people, telling them that there's these seven powerful, Canaanite nations, very warlike people, and then they also pointed out that Amalek, our greatest enemy, lives there. And so they scared the Jewish people, and we cried. And unfortunately, that was on Tisha B'Av, and that started instead of this great celebration. Tisha B'Av one day will be this great Yom Tov, and it's supposed to celebrate the day as a nation we came into Eretz Israel, as a nation we came into the land of Israel, but it became a day of mourning, and it became, unfortunately, a day where the two temples were destroyed. But in the future, that's going to be reversed. So we're facing, interestingly enough, a kind of parallel situation now, where back then in the days of Moshe, in the days of Moses, there was these seven powerful Canaanite nations that were trying to stop us from living in Eretz Israel. And interestingly enough, the Canaanite nations and the ancient Plishtim, the Philistines, they they were also invaders. Because they were invaders in the ancient world, because originally the land was given to Shem, the son of Noach, and he's known in the Torah as Malkit Tzedek. And originally, it was the land of Israel. The first owners were to the nation of Shem, and then I believe, his great grandson Aver, and they started yeshiva, the famous yeshiva Shem and Aver. And then they were invaded by the Canaani, and they were invaded by all these Canaanite nations. So too, in our current age, we have these seven Arab Palestinian terrorist groups that are trying to stop the Jews from inheriting the land. And of course they're claiming it's theirs. So it's interesting. So if we go to the origin of the modern Arab terrorist groups, we really have to start with the Muslim Brotherhood in 1928. I think they were behind the horrible massacres and pogroms done in the land of Israel back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. There was a horrible massacre in Hebron. They attacked the yeshiva in Hebron in 1929, I believe it was. And then Yasser Arafat, Yamak Shemo, he fought and joined. He was from Egypt. He was born in Egypt, and he fought with the Muslim Brotherhood against Israel in the War of 1948, and that was kind of the beginning of these um, seven terrorist groups. And then in 1964, Yasser Arafat, he goes on to found the Palestinian Liberation Organization. And under them, it's kind of like an umbrella for many, many terrorist organizations that came out of that. But you have like Fatah, you have the Palestine Liberation Army, and it's all under the PLO. And that became, one of the major terrorist groups. I think they were behind I think they were specifically behind when the Israelis were kidnapped to Uganda under Idi Amin at the time, and I think the horrible Black September attack, I think in the Munich Olympics in 1972. So really, the Palestinian history, in some sense, it really begins in 1964, and it's really no older. And then out of that, later on, Hamas, now who is more vicious, more Islamic, they right? They've kind of jumped to the head of the line, and as far as like the terrorist groups go right now. Also, the Islamic Jihad, Palestine Islamic Jihad, under them, I believe, is the Al Quds Brigades. That's one of their military wings. Also, you'll hear attacks by the Al Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. You'll hear the Palestinian Liberation Front. They were started in 1997. One of the older ones is actually the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They were started in 1967. They were Marxists. I think because they were communists, and the role of Islam became much more dominant in the Arab people. I think they faded from glory, but who knows? Marxism's on the rise again. Maybe they're making a comeback. But these are basically the seven main terrorist groups that we're facing today, and it's the same. It's not a coincidence. It's the same dynamic. So we're going to get advice here from Kalev ben Yefuna, who was married to Miriam, who was married to Moshe's sister. He was a prince of the tribe Yehuda. And he, after the spies spoke all the Lashon Hara, the Motzi Shemra about the land of Israel, he tried to calm the people down. And it says, "Vayahas Kalev esa'am," and Kalev, he kind of like hushed. He was like has. It's exactly like the word sounds. He hush, shh. Try to silence everyone, get them to calm down after the spies got them all riled up. So it says, let me see if I can bring it up here. So this is it's verse 30. And Vayachas Kalev Esa'am El Moshe. So it's interesting. So he was trying to calm everyone down, silence them. And it says El Moshe. He was trying to get everyone to focus back on Moshe, back on Moses, back on our holy leader, and away from the fear that the spies were bringing on the people. And he says, Vayomer Alo, Alo Naleh. He says, let us go up. He says, we'll go up. We can go up. V'yarashnu osa. And we can inherit it. Ki yachol nuchala. We are able to do it. So what Halev was saying is, yes, they might be this warlike people. They might be, physically terrifying, and they may have like strong armies. But we have Hashem on our side, and they can't stop us. There's nothing that can hold us back. Not all the armies of the world. If the one infinite being, if Hashem is on our side, we cannot be stopped. Hashem's promised us the land, and all we need to do is have a moon and Hashem. It becomes very simple. It becomes very easy. So don't listen to anyone that would say like, the land can't be conquered, the land can't be inherited by the Jewish people. It's like this land was promised to us, to Abraham, to Yitzhak, to Yaakov, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that it will be inherited by the Jewish people, and we simply have to merit it. We simply need to follow, the path that Hashem's laid before us, and it can be ours. And the path is the Torah, the mitzvos. And so now we have this difficulty nowadays. We have, this government, the secular government, and it's not working anymore. And this is not the way that the land of Israel can be inherited. It can't be conquered this way. It's just not going to work. And we really need like the increase in Torah learning from all the Jewish people, and the increase in all the Jewish people doing mitzvahs. And hopefully we're beginning to wake up to this. So then Yeshua ben Nun, so Joshua, who became the leader after Moshe, and he was the one that led the conquest of Eretz Yisrael for 7 years. So his advice was this. He says, Im chafetz banu Hashem, v'hevi osanu el haaretz. So Yeshua is saying, he says, if Hashem desires us, he will bring us to this land, el haaretz hazos. And so it's like we need to just be chafetz by Hashem. And how do we become desirable? How do we get Hashem to desire to do this for us? By listening to what Hashem wants us to do, learning the Torah, doing the mitzvahs, improving ourselves, growing spiritually, and then that's a person that can make use of this holy land. All the physical bounty and all the physical abundance, it's great, but it's all hinting at the great spiritual potential. It's a special land. It's a special land of Kedusha. It's a special land of holiness, and that's where the Torah HaKodesh, that's where the holy Torah can be fully understood to its deepest levels. And that's where all the mitzvahs can be done. And that's where we can become very close to Hashem, where Hashem will actually return his Shekhinah, or return his presence to the land. And Bezrat Hashem, while the rebuilding the Beis HaMikdash, the temple, and then all the world will be able to see, that there's just one infinite being. And it says, "But Yom Hachu, on that day, Hashem Echad," everyone will realize that Hashem is one. There's only one infinite being, Ushemo Echad, and his name will be one. And they'll see that there's no other God. There's just one infinite being. So, and then he says, Unasana lanu eretz. And then Hashem will give us the land. If Hashem desires it, nothing, not even all the nations of the world right now, as powerful as America, Russia, China, Iran, or you just pick all the nations of the world, as powerful as they all are, with the modern weaponry, the thermonuclear missiles, the hypersonic missiles, even we're going to the age of lasers now, drones, robot fighting. There's robot dogs that have flamethrowers on their back. It's just crazy. Nuclear submarines, just the firepower, the artillery, the tanks. It's just overwhelming. The stealth fighters, the stealth bombers, the military technology is just terrifying in some ways, but nothing, not all the armies of the world, not all the weapons of the world can stand up to the power of Hashem. And that's what Yeshua is telling us. It says, "Unasana lanu eretz," and he'll give us the land, Asher hi zavas chalav davash, the land that flows with milk and honey. All right, so we have great advice, from our holy ancestors, and I don't know, we got to listen. We just got to listen. I mean, I do think the Jewish people are beginning to wake up, and there's those that are rising up to stop us, but we have to do what worked in the past, and it's going to work again in the future. And Bezrat Hashem, we'll see the coming of Mashiach soon. But good things, and just it's day 265, and Bezrat Hashem, we see the rescue of all the hostages soon, and we see peace return again to the land, and we see the coming Mashiach. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you back again soon on Sweet and Good Torah.